All right guys, we're here with the 2024 HiLux Rogue, and we basically wanted to see, is it still worth buying in 2024? Particularly with Ford Ranger picking up the #1 spot for the 2023 sales charts. The last time we reviewed the old model Rogue, the Rogue itself was the HiLux itself was the #1 selling car in Australia. So what's changed? As we move around with the Rogue, we've got a couple of styling improvements, and as you can see visually, it looks a little bit beefier, and that's thanks to the widening of the front track. So it sits 140mm wider. They've pumped out the tires, which is now why you have these big beefy flares on both sides, because these wheels now sit outside of the old body for the HiLux. It's also been given a suspension lift to also help it have that tougher stance, I guess. Now, one of the interesting things to note with this car is it is quite long in the tooth for its model age. So the original N80 HiLux was released in 2015. So for this to receive quite a significant lot of mechanical upgrades and updates last year for this model signifies that potentially they're either working towards these particular improvements for the next model Toyota HiLux, or they just are really confident that the HiLux Rogue can help sell a few more cars, as well as the new GR as well, or the GR Sport. So starting at the front with the styling, it's basically the same HiLux. It gets some LED headlights and daytime running lights, some slight changing to the styling of the actual headlight unit. Plus you now get a radar cruise control badge directly in the middle, which is why the Toyota badge is flat. Now, that radar cruise control unit has been placed in a way that with most conventional bull bars that would go onto the Toyota HiLux, you shouldn't really have any issues with those kind of picking up your spotlights or your light bars. So really well thought out there by Toyota. The camera at the front indicates that it now has a 360-degree camera system. So you have a camera on each of the external mirrors, a camera on the back, and obviously the camera at the front, which will give you a nice 360 view, which we'll show you in the highlights. And down the bottom, you've got the front parking sensors, plus just some nice gray kind of highlights mixed in with the black on this particular car, and the matte kind of graphite finish that is on all these body moldings as well. So it's just been given a few detail upgrades around the body that will just give it a little bit of extra longevity in its model life. So the 2024 Toyota HiLux Rogue gets the 150 kilowatt, 500 Newton meter of torque engine that the rest of the HiLux range gets in the 4x4s. So it's a 2.8 litre. Now, I previously owned the previous version of this engine, so before it had the updates to the torque and the power. And to be honest, I found it enough for most of what I needed to do. There were certain moments on the highway for overtaking that it needed just a little bit more, and testing this out on the highway over the last few days, it definitely seems like it's had some of those improvements. One of the big advantages to the Rogue compared to some of the other competitors out there that have beefed up top model versions of their utes, this retains the 3.5 ton towing capacity that the SR5 retains, despite some of the more aggressive add-ons and mechanical changes. So that's part of why Toyota has gone so heavy on some mechanical changes, to make sure you can still actually use the ute instead of down rating the towing ability just to look fancy in a more expensive ute. One of the other cool things down in the engine bay here is this area here allows you to put additional fuses that will allow you to connect things like light bars, CB radios, or anything else that you need to fuse without having to splice directly on top of the actual battery. So once again, reducing the risk of potential fires from poor wiring and by not having a connection fused. So another cool thing there. As we come around to the side, guys, you have obviously the raised suspension gives you a bit more clearance. It will allow for different tires, so if you are needing mud terrains or all terrains, there are options in the market for those. And interestingly enough, with this particular model, it's also received an upgrade to the rear brakes. So the brakes are now a disc brake system in the back instead of the drums that were on the previous model. Coming around to the side, you will have some of that graphite matte finish on the door handles, so that continues there. So let's jump inside and have a quick look at what else you get in the Toyota HiLux. So in the interior of the Toyota HiLux, not much has changed. Now, I used to own one of these. In 2017, I bought a Toyota HiLux SR5. And to be honest, jumping in this feels like nothing's really changed. However, JBL has done an improved sound system for the HiLux in conjunction with Toyota. So you now have these big JBL speakers at the top and also on the door sides as well. Now, compared to the Ford Ranger Raptor that has the Bang & Olufsen system, the JBL system actually sounds a little bit more punchy, seems to handle the bass a little bit better, and just seems to be like set up a little bit better than the Ford Ranger. So from an audio perspective, I think you'll probably enjoy this a little bit more if you're heavy into your music. One of the features I used to love in my old HiLux was this cup holder setup here. So it has a normal size pocket there, just if you want to put like a 600ml, Coke or anything like that. But if you've got one of those coffee chill cartons, you can slide that forward and that will fit nice and neatly into there. And the best part about that is if you're trying to keep it cool in the summer months, you can have your aircon vent pointed directly at it to keep it nice and cool. Or in the winter months, if you're keeping your coffee warm, you can have your heating pointed directly at it as well. Down the bottom here, you've got a couple of different buttons that have been added. So things like your blind spot monitoring, as well as the camera view button. They're all throughout there, plus your parking sensors are activated all through there. Push button ignition system continues on this model, as well as the standard stalk for the radar cruise control. And the great thing with Toyota's setup when it comes to the cruise control setups is you do have the option to have just standard cruise control. So if you don't want the radar cruise control, you can deactivate that and just have traditional cruise. One of the big things that I missed when I went into a car that didn't have that for the last 12 months. Indicators on the right hand side, exactly where they should be, and they include the auto on and off headlights. Your daytime running lights are always on, and the steering wheel is adjustable both in height but also in reach, so you can have it set basically to wherever you're going to find it most comfortable when you've got this here. The dash itself, not much has really changed. Again, you have a mixture of analog and digital, and not really in keeping with a lot of its competitors, but let's see what else you get throughout the car. Let's have a look through the middle as well. So inside the interior, as I mentioned, not much has really changed. So in the center here, you still have your two cup holders, you still have your little storage nook, which comes in handy for your phone, because if you want the Apple CarPlay or Android Auto connectivity, you will need to use the traditional wired setup. It doesn't have wireless Apple CarPlay or Android Auto like some of its competitors. You do have a 12-volt outlet here and on the right-hand side, plus your rear diff lock is just there, your downhill assist control button, and a couple of spare switches, plus the heated seats for the left and right-hand front seats only. This particular car is a press car, and because we are using it to test some towing capacity and ability, Toyota always includes a tow brake controller, which has been fitted into that blank spot just there. Air conditioning system is pretty straightforward and is a dual zone climate control system. Now this has changed from when I had the HiLux. The HiLux that I had was actually a single zone climate control system. So that's a slight upgrade there. And you have a slightly upgraded digital display here for the driver that does Apple CarPlay and Android Auto and is pretty responsive, integrated into the JBL audio system as well. But once again, when it comes to functionality and even just design, it is a little bit dated, and the quality of the camera system is not the best. So if I press the camera system here, you're going to have a slightly degraded camera image quality, both for the front and the rear compared to some of its competitors. So look, it is a model that is now 9 years in terms of its age and model life. So potentially it's getting right to the point where, these kind of big changes will be made in the next model rather than the existing model life that this has left. But it would be a nice thing for Toyota to update and fix. You have your Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, but one of the cool things about the Toyota system is it still includes standard navigation as well. And the standard navigation here will allow you to have navigation coverage outside of any black spots for your mobile phone as well. So if your mobile phone loses coverage and signal, you're not going to be left high and dry without satellite navigation. So it's one big tick for the Toyota system. You have these cool little storage compartments here. And this one's actually cooled. So because there's a vent on the inside of this particular glove box, you can store water bottles, any kind of other drinks that you want to have in there, and have this closed and stored nice and neatly. And you've got a massive glove box there that does fit a whole bunch of different things, and this particular one has a ton of manuals. Outside of that, you've got sunglass holder at the top here, or glasses holder, an SOS button for Toyota's safety alert system. So in the event of an accident or that you need emergency assistance, you can press the SOS button and that will dial up the emergency services. And obviously just your light controls and a couple of individual map lights. One other thing to note with the Toyota HiLux is none of the models receive a vanity mirror on the right-hand side. It only is on the left-hand side. So if you do need a vanity mirror on the right-hand side, just buy another one, like just an individual standalone one. Armrest is positioned in a really nice way. When I had this car, I used to love longer drives in it because it was actually quite a comfortable seat and a comfortable setup, despite being a bit of a harder suspension in the SR5 model when it had not much weight in it. So good job by Toyota there in that design. It still has a traditional handbrake, so you're still going to need to pull that up and down. It's not an electronic handbrake like other models. However, for a lot of people, that still is a massive advantage compared to the electronic handbrakes on a lot of four-wheel drives. So tell me in the comments whether you like that or whether you would prefer the manual handbrake that this car has. And the seats are a perforated leather-scented seat. So what that means is all the high contact touch points that you will touch on a daily basis are going to be genuine leather. All the bits that are going to be harder wear and tear, such as the edge of the bolstering, the back of the seats, they're all artificial leather or pleather. The perforation in here allows for easy breathing on hot days. However, it doesn't get the ventilated seats in this particular car like some other brands do in their top model utes, only heated seats. Let's check out the back. So moving into the back of the HiLux, this is a spot where, look, it wasn't the biggest in its class at the time. It's still not the biggest in its class. But that front seat is positioned how I would sit, and there's still enough legroom in the back behind the driver. However, it is a bit tight if you are a little bit taller. So any of my mates that were 6'3", 6'4", definitely was a snug fit in the back here, particularly when they were broader shouldered. It was really a bit of a tight space in the back. You've got these shopping bag hooks, which used to be like a pretty handy thing for me to use on a regular basis. They do have a decent amount of weight that can be held with them. And really handy if you go into Woolies and you just want to have one bag that's not going to roll around. That was in the days of plastic bags. Now that everyone's forced us to use paper bags with flat bottoms, it doesn't really happen as much. So it's not as needed, but still a handy feature to have. A couple of pocket holders directly behind the actual seats. Air conditioning vents in the back here, which are very useful on hot days. However, you do miss out on any USB or USB-C charging outlets down the bottom here. Inside the center, however, there is a 220 volt, 100 watt outlet. So if you do need to charge up, any batteries for your drones, cameras, maybe a fridge, you can run them all through there. I used to actually run a 35 liter portable fridge in the back seat space here and have it plugged in directly through there. So it is possible. And look, it's handy to have, but not something you need all the time. In this center, the other thing that you do get is this armrest that drops down. So it is only two of you in the back, it is pretty handy, and it does have the cup holders. However, in the doors in the back, you will also have bottle holders as well. There are two ISOFIX points on the two outer seats of the back row. So if you have any child seats that you need to have restraints for, they are available there. And you do have the top tether points for your child seat directly behind the headrest up here. So you've got a bit of, you've got a few options in how you can use this backspace. And then one of the last remaining options that you can do with this back is you can actually fold this up. So if you need maybe a 60-40 split for the seat going up, let's say for example, the way I used it, I used to have a fridge that used to sit here. You can have it pushed up. These will clip onto the actual back of the headrest and secure it, and that keeps things nice and snug. The tow bar and anything else can be stored in that little pocket there, as well as another pocket underneath here. So there is a little bit of versatility in how you can use this space. Now let's check out the boot. So moving along to the boot. Now in a ute, obviously it's a tub. So one of the interesting things to note with the reverse camera is it sits slightly off center. So when you are looking at the reverse camera in the display is slightly off center as well. However, the cool thing about where it's been fitted, based on previous experience myself of owning one, once the tow bar is fitted, you can see it nice and clearly in the actual rear vision camera. So if you are lining up to a trailer or a van and you're trying to, pair up the hitch, you shouldn't really have any issues with it being off center, like a few people have mentioned about it in the past. With the Rogue, this is a centrally locking rear tub, which once again was something my car didn't have. So when you close the tub with your key, it will lock. Now it's not supported at all. So if you've got your kids and they're young, or you're trying to do this one-handed while holding some other things, Look, it is a bit of a heavy tailgate to drop down, so just bear that in mind. The cool thing with this carpeted section here that has been part of the Rogue since the previous model is that it is easily removable because it is a Velcro back. So if you need to shake it out or wash it out, you can. Look, I understand why they've done it. It aids massively when it comes to noise reduction and comfort on the inside. However, I'm not a fan of carpets when it comes to, you know, areas where you're going to be loading a whole bunch of stuff that is just going to wear them out, or where they're going to get soggy. So we'll find out whether this ute has any water retention on the inside, because while this has a roller cover fitted to it, it has been raining pretty heavily here in Brisbane, so let's have a look. So opening this up, it's just the push of one button that will retract, and as you can see from the inside, it's actually all pretty dry in most of the areas where you would expect water to have come down, and you don't lose out a huge amount of space with that roller cover. So that's actually a really cool thing, by the way, that Toyota does their design work, in that they actually think about how the customer is actually going to use the ute, but also in that longevity side of things. So the roller cover doesn't roll super fast or super slow, it's just kind of a gradual pace, because they've obviously factored in the longevity on the roller cover as well. And once again, you can lift this up, and by lifting that up, you can actually see where a lot of that sound deadening has been done in those channels of the tub, where you would normally get a lot of that noise coming through. So that is one of the main reasons why this is actually a carpeted area versus just spraying in a tub liner, which wouldn't really aid too much when it comes to sound deadening. There is a 12-volt outlet in the back here, so if you do need to charge anything, you are good to go. Plus, you also have a couple of courtesy lights on both sides, so if you're trying to unload or load this area at night, you will have plenty of lighting. And there's a couple of tie-down hooks just on both of the sides here that are nice and easily accessible as well. So it's a little bit to offer. Now, the big thing with this car is it sits at 150 kilowatt and 500 Newton meters of torque. Now, it's definitely amongst the higher end of the ute market for a 4-cylinder engine, and longevity is what you're going to get with it. So when I owned the Toyota HiLux, I had it for 3 years. I didn't have a single issue with the car. So while it's not the latest and greatest in a lot of its features that it has, reliability has always been a big part of the actual car. I did have a DPF that needed to be replaced early on in the car's life, but once that was replaced, it was pretty good to go from there. So would I consider a 2024 Toyota HiLux with the ute market heating up and having a lot more fancy tech inside? My answer is 100%. It still rides just as good as a lot of the utes that we're comparing against currently. And in my opinion, I actually think this is the better buy between the Ford Ranger and the Toyota HiLux. So tell me what you think in the comments. Am I right? Am I wrong? What do you like about your Ford Ranger? What do you like about your Toyota HiLux? And if you've got another ute that you would recommend versus any of those two, let us know in the comments and we'll try to do a review as well. But thanks once again for watching. Make sure you subscribe and like this video, because that will assist us in being able to create more videos and get access to more cars for you. And let me know what else you'd like to see. Thanks for now.